Nothing short of an absolute shame of a loss, everybody. Just when you thought that the Mets may have steered and cleared for a series victory the first time in 2025, Kodai Senga versus Sandy Alcantara. Sandy doesn't go deep into the game. Brandon Nimmo, more like Brandon Nimmo, does the home run accolade yet again. Kodai Senga strikes out 8 and only allows 2 earned runs. But who would have thought that it would be Francisco Lindor's defense that would be the greatest demise in this ball game? And yet here we are. A combination of Lindor's 2 costly errors that we'll get into, paired with an umpire that was as blind as ever, but as lopsided as ever. Really curious to see the umpire card tomorrow morning. That'll be posted on X, I'm sure, relaying how the Marlins were favored by at least a run, if not 2 in this one. Every close call, the Mets were squeezed, whereas in the case of Miami, they got pretty much everything and then some in their favor. So let's live react and break down to everything that transpired in this matchup, inning by inning, in this 4-2 Metropolitan loss. How's it going, everybody? For those that don't know me, my name is Tyler Ward, better known here as Wardy to many of you guys, with over 30,000 subscribers, covering every single Mets game throughout the entire course of the season, preseason, certainly regular season, postseason, and we just finished our first watch party of the year that we were live both here on YouTube and the Playback app, where if you have an MLB subscription, you were able to sign in with that through playback.tv/WardyNYM and actually watch the game in real time and listen to Gary, Keith, and Ron on the broadcast while hearing my reactions as the game was going on. And that was a lot of fun, so I look forward to our next watch party sometime next week. We peaked at right around 55 or so people. We have over 120 active members already in our community, so if you guys would like to join that next time we do it, hopefully after a Mets victory and not in a Mets loss, the way that this was a snooze fest on the offensive end, check it out, link down below, and thank you guys kindly for that. But before we break down this ball game, headlined by some brilliant pitching, not only Kodai Senga and what was working right outside of a couple meatballs, I should say, the absolute dog in Max Kranick, the guy that we did a video on just a day ago on this platform, and I told each and every one of you, Max Kranick is going to be the next stud reliever for this Mets team, and he was far and away the biggest standout that you could rightfully argue in this game, along with Kodai Senga and Brandon Nimmo. So without further ado, let's do a quick roll call here in the live show, and if you guys are watching this on replay, please let me know your initial reactions and your biggest takeaway or lack thereof in the comments down below to this Game 2 series loss in Miami for the Mets against the Marlins. And yes, they did in fact lose to the Marlins, and I have schmuck fans that aren't Mets fans already commenting on my stuff saying, haha, Mets lose. I understand this is the course of the 162, but to lose to Miami is inexcusable. It's also inexcusable to lose to Miami because of bad fundies. Yeah, here we are. So let's break it down. We got Malone in the chat. How you doing? Sad Auburn fan, I mean sad Mets fan right now too after this loss. Sal, how you doing? And Sal, who's here to troll as always, but we appreciate the viewership. CJ, Malone, Don, we got Sudine, Ethan, Andres going up the list here. Dave Kaplitz, Kat, my great members, how are you? They played lousy. We're going to talk about Lindor. Don't you worry, Dave. I promise we will. Scott H, Ethan going up here even more. We got Squints, if I didn't say him already. Shrek's great member going up the list here. Josh, great member. Mr. Chicken, how are you? Wacky Blocks, how are you? Eugene, Ronald Ryan, love the name. Everybody, come one, come all for our latest New York Metropolitan postgame show. And folks, we're going to rapid fire break this puppy down inning by inning right here, right now. And then we're going to get into key takeaways on Kodai Senga, what worked with his arsenal, what didn't. Max Kranick, certainly what worked, because nothing didn't work for Max. It was brilliant. But on the offensive end, why couldn't the boys hit a lick today? And what are we looking forward to, or lack thereof, into that series finale? 4:40 p.m. start this Thursday between the Mets and the Miami Marlins. Now, folks, and I actually apologize, I meant to say this Wednesday, because today's Tuesday, right? I always have my days confused. I digress. All right, guys, it starts here in the first inning that we saw, and let me see those initial reactions on a scale 1 to 10. How frustrating was a loss like this for each and every one of you? I'd love to see in the chat and in the comments down below. Billy Dottie with the $2 hollow. We appreciate that. Lindor lost us this game, plain and simple. And the funny thing is that without Lindor, the Mets only have 1 run in this ball game. So you can't even say that he completely lost us this game. But yeah, it's hard to not see how Lindor was a heavy factor when he defensively was our demise, as crazy as that is to see. Master Debo says that's okay, Wardy. So he's feeling okay. We see people frustrated. 10 11 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 100 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I mean, Lindor's defense was an April Fool's joke. That's the best line I've seen so far today, and you're not wrong. It was a joke. And I do bet that's probably in hand with Lindor again. His son Koa was just born. Not too much sleep maybe the past couple days. I know he's going to be fine, but no denying that Lindor did play a negative factor on the defensive end because the game kick-started there in the first inning where Sandy goes quickly 1-2-3 against this Mets lineup and Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. Then at the bottom of the first, we would see Senga give up a double and a home run, and sadly, it was nothing short of a meatball. Senga looked pretty sharp in this outing, but what was without question his biggest bugaboo was throwing fastballs 93 to 95 right down the pipe. What do you think's going to happen otherwise? Of course, it's a piss missile center right. It's quickly a 2-0 Marlins lead. Stowers, who was one of those key prospects acquired from the Baltimore Orioles in that Trevor Rogers trade at the trade deadline last year, that back then I still didn't understand why the Orioles did it because it aged like milk for them. And I remember reacting live as a Bleacher Report host to that at the time, the same way that I cover other things at Bleacher Report that you guys can actually check out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 5 p.m. sharp in the app. And I have 2 segments tomorrow. I have a 2 p.m. segment in which we're actually going over 4 to 5 blockbuster type of MLB trades that we could see happen this season, not just related to the Mets, but MLB as a whole. And I will probably talk about the Mets, so be on the lookout for that. And we will have our 5 o'clock segment for just latest MLB hot-button topics. That's 20 minutes after tomorrow's game has already started. So if you're locked in the Mets game and don't want to chime into the BR app, then I completely understand. But as we get into the second inning, everybody, because we saw Senga make it a quick 2-0 lead for Miami just because of some poorly placed fastballs right down the pipe, middle. Can't ask for anything better if you're an opposing hitter. We've seen the second, though. WardyNYM continues the home run spree. Remember how many of you guys were complaining just a day ago? Why are we starting WardyNYM on the leadoff spot? Why would we do such a thing? No call-ins tonight at all, Jack. We're only doing call-ins in select games this year, specifically ones that warrant them, that are going to be entertaining games, especially not on an offensive snooze fest after I just did a watch party the past 2.5 hours. Your guy doesn't want to have to exaggerate this longer than he needs to just for, a day game tomorrow. That's a bizarre time around 4:40 or so. But I digress. WardyNYM, who had the home run accolades that we saw yesterday, ripping a bomb that we saw to right. One of them, not the final Mets home run they hit in their 10-4 victory yesterday. Fast forward to today, everybody, and WardyNYM does it again. He makes it a 1-run ball game, his second of the series, his second in as many nights. And now, folks, we advance to the bottom of the second, and that's where Senga starts to get in his groove. He strikes out Bride on the Ghost Fork. He strikes out Paulie on the Ghost Fork. And Myers would reach on a Francisco Lindor error, but Terens thankfully throws out that same runner, and Myers trying to reach second base with a stolen bag to no avail, and that does it for the inning. Terens continues his tremendous both offense and defense. Senga starts to get in a groove, and sadly, errors were in fact the demise of the Mets outside their offense, just not doing too much for the most part. Alvin with a $2 hollow says, it's not the error Lindor made the concern, it's the concern is the heading. I disagree in the sense that if we followed Lindor long enough, and I know each and every one of you guys have, if you've been following Lindor since he made his Mets debut in 2021, you know his upward direction offensively. And you know there's been one key commonality, and that's usually slow starts to the season. I think out of all things that we could critique Lindor on, the bat isn't something that we should be doing as heavily of because we know he's going to eventually snap into his groove like he always does. You might not like that he's typically a slow starter, but you know it's inevitably going to get to a point where Lindor is absolutely raking for this Mets team throughout the course of the 162. And also, it's kind of interesting to pick on Lindor offensively tonight when he was one of the only guys that showed up offensively tonight. But it's the defense. That defense is a key focal point of what we have to get into. So bizarre, and that's why I'm not concerned about it. And there's one man that I have the utmost confidence in to not have a back-to-back 2-error game. It's Francisco Lindor. And if he has 2 errors in the series finale against the Marlins tomorrow, then hey, I'm sorry for jinxing it because I would have never saw that coming. Regardless, though, we would see it's a 2-1 Mets lead, and then after we would see Terens throughout that runner, we advance to the third. And the third, Luisangel Acuna, who got the start here for the Mets at second base. Brett Baty would come in later in the game as a pinch hitter. He did nothing, unfortunately. Acuna, however, Going oppo on Sandy Alcantara? An opposite field double with ease? We're taking that to the bank. I don't care if he was behind on Sandy's pitch, which is what led to the double. The reality is that Luis Angel Acuna looks like he deserves to be here. He doesn't look completely outmatched in the ways that outside of his one at-bat, Brett Baty finds himself falling in that category, unfortunately. Acuna continues to impress, and he's a guy that I think is going to lead the Mets to having a great problem on their hands when Jeff McNeil eventually comes back from injury. If you guys are commenting in the chat, thank you guys kindly. I'm going to be interacting with you all in a second. We're just replaying and reacting to what transpired innings 1 through 9 and this 4-2 Game 2 loss in Miami for the New York Mets. As we continue on here, not only in the third did we see Acuna get that opposite field double, but Lindor would then drive him in with an RBI single right up the middle. Afterwards, nothing else would transpire, but the Mets at that point had tied the ball game 2-2, and Nick Fortes would strike out promptly on what was a terrible swing and an even better ghost fork by Kodai Senga. From there, we would see Edwards also strike out there on the ghost fork, so Kodai only has Ks in the ghost fork fashion. He's locked in, he's back. Then he gets a final strikeout, yet again on the ghost fork. Striking out the side is Kodai Senga in the third, which leads us to the fourth inning, in which Brandon Nimmo strikes out the first of 2 times Brandon Nimmo would strike out tonight on complete balls down and out of the zone. Shout out to the umpire, whoever his name is, for being an absolute piece of garbage that he was with his game calling today. Nothing personal, buddy, but when you're paid literally to just call a ball game, and yet you hand everything on a silver platter to Miami and don't even give the Mets a call or two to work with, you can kick rocks, buddy. So that's my initial reaction to that, and my more blunt and expletive reaction you guys can check out when we do our watch parties again, to everyone that was chiming into the playback.tv/WardyNYM show earlier this evening. But as we go on from there, nothing transpires for the Mets offensively. On the bottom of the fourth, this was the most costly error of the game by far. Francisco Lindor bobbles it. His second error, just can't make the play on a routine ground ball. The first error was more understandable. He was charging it, and that one was a harder play to make. The second one, though, was all mental game by Lindor. We would see Mervis at first base strike out on the ghost fork. Great job there by Senga. But then with 2 outs, Bride gets on with a walk, and Paulie then rips a 2-run double to give them a 4-2 lead on, sadly, what was, yes, the same exact problem that Kodai had by giving up the double and the home run to kickstart the ball game. And that is a meatball right down the pipe. That has been the continuation with Kodai Senga and his struggles. It wasn't even commanding the strike zone terribly, because Senga didn't walk everyone and their mother in this outing. He only walked 1 batter, so it's not like that was his demise. But what was Senga's demise? Leaving too much over the heart of the plate with a fastball that did not have enough zip throughout the entire course of the game. Senga, funny enough, in his final strikeout that we saw, would reach 97 on the gun, and that would be his 8th K and final K in a clean 5th inning, and we're going to get into his final line in just a second. But before we do, AZ in the chat with a $20 donation says, "Can't say I'm surprised. Our New York Mets seem to almost always play lousy against Miami. It's one of the more frustrating aspects of past and now Mets teams. However, it's early in the season. Let's calm down. LFGM, baby." LFGM, indeed, my man. I appreciate you chiming in. AZ, you've been an awesome supporter. Thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate that. But now, guys, as we take a quick look as to what we got from the Mr. Ghost Fork himself and Kodai Senga in tonight's outing, it was as follows, everybody. Senga gave the Mets 5 innings of 77 pitch, 3 hit, 1 walk, 2 earned run, 8 strikeout ball. 4 total runs were scored, 2 of which actually counted against Senga. And as we take a look at the arsenal and how he mixed up his pitches, Senga was brilliant, especially when utilizing the ghost fork. It was just a couple hangers that we saw, meatballs of that 4-seam fastball that did him dirty, but the ghost fork he threw 29% of the time, same as the 4-seam, both of which that he utilized the most in this outing. The ghost fork topped out at 90 miles per hour and sat 83, at least what we're seeing through Baseball Savant. I don't believe that to be entirely true. I think that might be a slight error, but regardless, the ghost fork was absolutely disgusting, and we saw the whiff rate looked really, really good on it as well. We saw a 22% whiff rate against right-handed batters and a 33% whiff rate against left-handed batters. The 4-seam fastball had a 34% whiff rate against righties, 24% against lefties, and he topped out 97 and sat 94.5, which is just over a mile per hour down from his usual norm from a year ago. The cutter they utilized 22% of the time, topped out 93 and sat 90. The sweeper, 12% of the arsenal, topped out 82 and sat right around 80. And the slider, 6% of the arsenal, topped out 84, sat right around 83. And the curveball they threw just twice, 71 is where he topped out. 69.8, so rounding out to 70 is where he sat on the curveball. A really sharp outing for Kodai Senga that I now just realized, for whatever reason, the highlights said, we're just not going to run. We're going to freeze on you, Wardy, because you don't deserve nice things, as the Mets didn't show up enough offensively or certainly defensively, i.e. Francisco Lindor, in this key loss to the Miami Marlins. Billy Dottie, that we see with the $2 holla, thank you so much for that. He says, I know for a fact we will win the series tomorrow. Billy, I'm glad you have the script, Billy. Hopefully that, in fact, becomes a reality, because I would love nothing more than a breakdown in our post-game segment tomorrow. Breaking news, everybody. The Mets have officially won their first series of the year. Backed by a dominant Clay Holmes outing, a Juan Soto home run, a Brett the Met Beatty doing the Brett the Met things by looking like he's actually here to stay. That is what I would love to see in tomorrow's outing. But before we get there, let me hear on a scale of 1 to 10, everybody, to my live viewers as well as my replay viewers in comments down below, how would you grade Kodai Senga's final line here of 5 innings, 77 pitch, 3 hit, 1 walk, 2 earned run, 8 strikeout ball, 4 total runs allowed, but only 2 of which actually accounted and cared for it? Let me see in the chat, everybody. Spam it on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm giving Kodai Senga a very rock solid 6.57 range out of 10. The only reason why I'm not going higher is because Kodai just had a couple way too over the plate fastballs. Like, I have no clue where the command was for like those 3 pitches, but it was just obnoxious. Smack dab, dead center. All you had to be was a competent hitter to rake one. Otherwise, I thought Senga was brilliant. And I will give him credit. Senga's final strikeout, too, was 97. That got a lot of the plate. But because it was 97, and because it was his hardest pitch of the game, that went in direct hand with why he got that final punchy. So when you're throwing 93 to tops 95 down the pipe, you're going to be batting practice. But touching 97 in the upper echelons of the 90s, you're going to naturally get more swing and miss, especially from a young, hungry, and big swing and miss Miami Marlins club. Sal says 6 out of 10. Darren says 6.5 out of 10. Mike says 5 out of 10. 7 out of 10 says Gerald. 7 out of 10 says PB9. 6 out of 10 says Andres. And let's see. 5 out of 10 says CAG. 6.5 says Cat. Let's see. Alvin going 8. Love the optimistic viewpoint there. Chalk going 7. Dave going 5. Will going 6. Giovanni going 5. Alvin going 8. 8 was Lindor. But yeah, let's put it this way. It would be a higher rating slightly if he had better defense. That's 100% true. But I'm really not accounting for the errors much as I'm doing this breakdown on Senga. Has more to do with the length, where he couldn't even give us beyond 5 innings today. But I also understand it's not so much his fault as it is Carlos Mendoza and the Mets just being smart with him and not wanting to over-push things as they're trying to make sure he stays healthy throughout the course of the 162. But damn, is it refreshing to see Kodai Senga back out there and giving us actually a solid start. You know, didn't give us a full quality start because I believe he was an inning shy of doing so. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, everybody. But great signs in the right direction for Kodai Senga, who we're going to need to rely on heavily to be our ace throughout the course of this season to help lead the way. Especially now with Sean Manaea having his injury setback, not returning until right around when Frankie Montas is expected to now in the first week of June or so. That's not ideal for this rotation, so we're going to be heavily relying on guys that we otherwise don't necessarily want to or shouldn't have had to initially heading into spring training this year. But shout out to Mr. Kodai Senga and his Ghost Fork, a very good-looking season debut. But now, as we hop back into this one, everybody, let's continue to break down what transpired in this matchup, because Senga leaves after 5 strong innings, which means in the 6th, the Mets sadly go down offensively. 1, 2, 3 in the snap of a finger. Max Kranick, my dog, your dog, the man who I've been preaching to the choir more than anyone else on this YouTube platform, going back the past year and a half now. Max Kranick is here, baby, and he's here to stay. It's one thing for Max Kranick to give the Mets 2 massive outs and bases loaded, less than 2-out jam, facing Yordan Alvarez in Houston, and then getting a pop-out for Mark Vientos to make the snag, and then another quick round-out thereafter to do it with ease. Max Kranick goes out tonight, everybody, and he doesn't just give us a 1, 2, 3 in the 6th. He doesn't just give us a 1, 2, 3 in the 7th, while Brandon Nimmo sadly struck out again on what was a ball out of the zone. F the umpire for not knowing the zone if it smacked him across the face. Winker with a 2-out single down the first base area that we saw, and Terens with a deep fly out that was oh so close. That felt like it would have been a home run in a different ballpark. A great swing by Terens, who's been our best extra base hitter outside of guys like Juan Soto, for example, and Mr. Big Me Pete Alonso. Kranick didn't just give us 2 shutty. No, Max Kranick gave us 3 scoreless, 3 gorgeous, 3 perfect innings. And let's break down what worked so well for Max Kranick and his arsenal. He utilized the 4-pitch mix. Slider, he threw 50% of the time. Look at the rates, everybody. A 64% whiff rate against right-handers and a 36% whiff rate against lefties. Utilizing the four-seam fastball almost 30% of the time, a 27% whiff rate against both righties and lefties, and he topped out 97, sat 95. The slider topped out 92, sat 90. The curveball that I utilized 18% of the time, topped out 78 to 79, and the sinker that he just threw once was at 95. What a dog for Max Kranick, guys. I can't get over this kid. I'm not just saying that because he grew up a diehard Mets fan and I'm a friend with him on a personal level, but it's more so the reality that, like, he's actually blossoming. Like what we saw the past year plus of him working diligently in the minor leagues, leading into him being a multi-inning reliever this spring training for the Mets. It's a continuation of exactly that. And you can't even say that, oh, well, he dominated against the Marlins. Who cares? But he did this against the Astros, too, with 2 massive outs and a high-pressure cooker situation in a 1-run ball game where Jose Butto couldn't get out of his own mess after he stayed in a little too long. Max Kranick is here to stay. And no, I'm not on some type of stimulant or anything like that, Brian. I'm just amped up when I talk about the Mets every single postgame. And the reason why is because I don't want to call myself a professional, but I am a pro in the sense that I have been doing this nightly for multiple years, and I'm a fast talker. I know exactly how I want to break down the game. Every single game I do, every single way that I cover it, I know exactly how I'm going about every single step of the way, and I know I want to do it in a relatively short time frame. That way it's not too long-winded for my replay viewers especially. So no, I am sweating bullets, but it's more so in hand because I spent the past 3 hours covering the game live in real time with fans in the playback app where I was sharing my own commentary. And when you have 2 obnoxious bright lights on you in a studio fashion the way that I do right now for hours on end, you're gonna sweat bullets, you're gonna look like you're on something, and I am a speed talker. Even when you guys meet me in person at Citi Field this year, it'll be a continuation of exactly that. The only time you see me not speed talking is because when I'm really in my element, I'm really chilling out, and I know that I can just kind of really just dial it back and be more of myself, if that makes sense. I know, exactly, Brandon. But again, you got to know that. So he might be a newer comer in here. That pause? That was newer comer. What the hell am I saying here? Brian might be newer on the platform here, which is why he's like, what's up with this guy? Why does he talk as fast as he does, you know? And CAG, I love you so much. Thank you for the kind words. But guys, we've seen the 8th inning, right? This was after the Mets don't do anything in the 7th. In the 8th, Brett Beatty comes in for a pinch hit. Sadly, doesn't do anything. Jose Siri, my man, doesn't do anything. Francisco Lindor, first pitch swinging. That'll always drive me up a wall. I love Lindor to death. It doesn't matter at all if Lindor is having at-bats in April or at-bats in August. I hate first pitch swinging. I don't hate it when he hits home runs and gets on base. Yes, I'm an absolute hypocrite. This is 1000% where your biased fandom comes into play. When it fits my narrative is when I talk about it. So when Lindor first pitch swings that leads to an inning play, it's going to piss me off. But if Lindor pulled that single through first base and got on, I'm not yapping. That's just how it is. This is a results-oriented game for us to break down as fans, so this is the reality of it. But Lindor didn't do anything there. A 1-2-3 inning. Max Kranick, a dog, 1-2-3. And the 9th, you got, again, the creme de la creme of the lineup, the top of the order. You got the one and only Juan Soto. You got Polar Bear Pete Alonso. You got Nimmo. You think the boys are going to do something, and they tried, but sadly, it wasn't enough. We saw Soto get on with a walk because he's Juan Soto. Alonso on with a fielder's choice that was just avoided of being a double play. Thankfully, that didn't happen. Nimmo gets on with a single for his second hit of the day. He is our key offensive standout, obviously. Nimmo, the only man for the Mets that had multiple hits today, if I'm not mistaken, including his beautiful solo shot of a home run. Yep, Mets only had 5 hits. They actually out-hit Miami today. Wow, that pisses me off even more that we lost this game. Nothing worse than when you lose a game 4-2 and the opposing team only has 3 hits. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I know the offense sucked for the Mets today, but it comes down to that Lindor defense. That's where it actually matters most. And you guys are talking about the torpedoes. Will Pat in the chat says, we need torpedoes ASAP. Let me enlighten you. The torpedoes are coming. They're coming big time. We know Lindor has a torpedo bat. He utilized it today. Alonso spoke on it yesterday, and he had a beautiful quote which said, it's not as much about the arrow as it is the Indian, along those lines. And I thought that was beautifully said. You can give anyone a torpedo-style bat, but you have to be a batter that especially gets ran in on their hands a lot and finds himself barreling more so closer to the label, more in by the hands, which is what will warrant shaving off more towards the end and sloping the end of that barrel. If you are a guy like Alonso, who even at the end of his barrel can poke one oppo, you're less inclined to transition into a torpedo bat style. We broke down the torpedoes in great length in a video that dropped this morning. It's titled Big Mets Updates, Lindor's torpedo bat, Alexander Canario traded, Braves Jerks and Profar suspended, because we are obviously always going to talk about key things that happen to rival teams, because that impacts the Mets one way or the other. Whether it's positive or negative, we have to talk about those things, along with the key takeaways from yesterday's game furthermore. Why not drop first half Lindor down in the lineup? Because here's the thing, Shock. Lindor is not a liability enough offensively to just drop him in the lineup the way that you're thinking. They're not going to do that. And on top of it all, why would you want to move Lindor out of the true position that he has shown his best baseball in a Mets uniform? As soon as Lindor got put in the leadoff last year, which was right around mid-May, he never looked back. He went back to Cleveland Lindor and similar offensive output, and he was an NL MVP, true NL MVP candidate throughout the entire course of the summer. If you take Lindor out of the leadoff spot, you throw up the entire regimen of what the Mets are trying to do and to try to have consistency with their lineup. So yes, I understand. You might not like the fact that Lindor swings a bit of a noodle bat in the first month or so, but is that a bullet for us to bite as long as it isn't our complete demise each game? Yes. And again, I don't know why we're sitting here yapping about Lindor's bat when he's the man that drove in one of the 2 runs today. What you should be yapping about is the one-off defensive disaster class, which was him bobbling not 1 but 2 balls. That's what happened here. As it's titled right down below, Lindor's 2 errors cost Mets in Miami. There was no greater lack of production than what we saw from Mr. Smile today. Outside of that, again, the key takeaways were 3 perfect innings from our guy Max Kranick, Kodai Senga going 5 strong innings, Acuna in leadoff. I don't hate that idea, but at the same time, I don't want to deviate with this lineup too much either. I want Lindor in leadoff. I don't care if he has a slow start, as long as he is not single-handedly losing us ball games consistently on the offensive end. That is not something that I want to see happen. Keep him there. Acuna is thriving. I think we need to keep Acuna more towards the bottom of the order. That's going to benefit him, his plate approach, and how pitchers are going up against him. If he's your guy to start every single game, I'm not entirely sure if that's going to lead to the success that the Mets want. Not to say it can't happen, but there's reasons as to why Lindor, Soto, and Alonso will be the greatest commonality that the Mets have in their lineup throughout the entire season. Is getting Sandy a stretch? I don't think it's a complete stretch, and we're going to talk more on Sandy and others and content that drops potentially as soon as tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of interesting questions that now arise with the Mets, with Sean Manaea having a setback. I don't expect them to do anything drastic, but you'd have to imagine that they're at least going to be throwing out some feelers as to some guys that maybe they won't land now, but could really hone in on by time that we get to the trade deadline. And just for the same reason that you guys like Acuna at the top of the lineup is the reason why I like Acuna at the bottom of the lineup. I love Acuna in the 8 or 9 hole because he can be a true plate setter to go back to the top of the lineup for Lindor, for Soto, for Alonso. Team flat, uninspired, and Corona. Again, it's always going to happen. Anytime the Mets lose a game against a bad team, that's what our initial reactions are going to be. Regardless of how big or how small the Mets payroll is, it's never going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, it's never not going to happen is what I mean to say. There's always going to be shitty losses throughout the course of the 162. Until the Mets even establish themselves at all close to a Dodger level on organization standpoint, from players, front office, how it's ran, and everything in between. And even then, the Dodgers lost some games last summer that you were shaking your head like, how did that happen? It happens to all of them. It happens to the best of them. And if there is one sliver of positivity to take out of a loss like this, outside of the key player performances I highlight on the pitching end for each and every one of you, It's that it's April 1st. Sadly, it's not April Fool's, even though it is April Fool's Day, but this loss was a joke in its own right, I guess you could rightfully say. But knowing that this is the first loss to Miami, and the Mets have another game against the Marlins tomorrow, we have a series against the Miami Marlins at home after the Blue Jays, this should be 3 straight series victories for the Mets. If the Mets do not win the next 3 series starting tomorrow, I will, of course, tell you guys how much that sucks to see, because it shouldn't happen. These are games that the Mets should be continuing to go out and win night in and night out. Every team wins 60 and loses 60 at minimum. No, you're 1,000% right, unless you're the White Sox from last year. But here's my take. Wolven Abel makes the White Sox a 70-plus win team this year. I think they take a 30-win jump from last year or so. That's how confident I am that even though the White Sox, you have no clue who's playing most of the time, it feels like they finally have the proper clubhouse leadership with a young, hungry manager who, fun fact for those that don't know, the Mets actually interviewed Wolven Abel for the managerial position going back to before that they said yes to Mr. Buck Showalter. The Mets were considering Venable among others, as they were also considering Venable, if I'm not mistaken, when they were debating as to if they were going to be going with Louis Rojas or not in the first year under Steve Cohen. So I'm wishing well for the South Side and those White Sox fans, because they've been going through hell and back. A damn Dodgers fan just walked up my driveway wearing a jersey, told him to leave. I'm in Australia, still can't get away from them. Why would Cat, unless this Dodgers fan is a friend, more than a friend, or a family member, why in God's name, in wherever the hell you are in Australia, is a schmuck walking up your driveway in a Dodger jersey? You know what I bet? I bet he has a Dodger jersey on, but I bet on the back it's like Jason Hayward. Watch it be someone like so miscellaneous that you're like, what? You know, that they got for like $1 or so? Like, I'm curious. But I'm getting on a tangent now. Very interesting, to say the least, Cat. Great member, all the way from Australia. Fun fact too, Cat, my brother actually just got back from a trip in New Zealand and Australia, and he said between the two, he liked Australia more. So I'm sure you're happy about that. It's no slight to my New Zealand Mets fans out there. He just sharing his experience. He actually said that, believe it or not, Australians were far more welcoming to him as an American there just on a work trip and vacation than what they were in New Zealand, which I found very interesting. Very interesting. Exactly, Andres. That's my point. And there's someone stroming around in Australia with a Dodgers jersey. It's got to be like the most random player ever on it. Melbourne. Oh, there you go. So you're right in the heart Australia. Yep. Complete ticket. Oh, you guys cracked me up. Listen, the Mets may have sucked today outside of our guys in Kodai Senga, Brandon Nimmo, Max Kranick, and Luis Angel Acuna, but it's always having so much fun interacting with the thousands of you guys every single night, like what we're doing right here, right now, that makes it all worth it. And before I get out of here, we see Frank says, I've been following the Mets since 1967. None of these Mets players are worth any more than $1.3 million per year. This team is intentionally nothing more than a 500 team, and not even 500, 499 team. Well, Frank, I cannot wait to see you eat those words, Frank, because I'm going to go on the limb, Frank, and say that you're the same fan who, when the Mets were 0-5 last year and started 11 games below 500, you never thought for a damn second that they were even going to get as close to a playoff spot as he did, let alone as close to the World Series as they did. So as a relay to everyone, every single year, it's a marathon, not a sprint. When it's time to overreact, I'll let you know when it's time to overreact, but we're not there yet. That is going to do it, though, for our latest post-game show, everybody. Thank you kindly for chiming in live on our replay. Really, really do appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed our coverage, smash that like and subscribe on your way out. 2 quick things for you. If you guys would like to hang out with Wardy at a Mets game this year, we are doing a Mets pre-sale priority list at my Gmail at officialwardynym@gmail.com, which is linked down below in the description. Send me your full name and the amount of tickets you'd have interest in, and you guys will be automatically getting first dibs when we roll out our official sale on Mets tickets for a Wardy-related event at Citi Field this year, where you guys will be able to attend a game with me, hang out with me for the entire game. We'll have some fun perks along with it. officialwardynym@gmail.com. Check out SeatGeek. That way you guys can get 10% off your next ticket purchase as well. Maybe it's for the Mets home opener right around the corner this Friday. Maybe it's for the series that I'll be attending against the Marlins April 9th. That day game, the series finale, is when I'll be there, and I cannot wait to be there and interact with a lot of you guys. Whatever your interest is, check out SeatGeek as well with my promo code WARDY10, link link down below for your next ticket purchase. And final thing as well, folks, we're giving away a Mets jersey once we hit 33,000 subscribers on the platform. We're less than 600 away for any player you currently want on the roster to one lucky subscriber. And all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, help us get a 33K, and then I will announce the following details as to how you guys can get in on that giveaway in a future live show from there. We already gave away 2 Juan Soto jerseys on the platform this year and 1 Juan Soto Met shirt jersey. I'd imagine you're probably going to want a Soto jersey next for whoever wins this one. But regardless, folks, hope to see you guys once we hit 33K doing that next giveaway. And until we have our show for pregame and postgame tomorrow, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And this is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go Mets, baby.